this isn't viable, actually, when more than 40% of your party vote against you, particularly when nobody really organized that. That's the extraordinary thing, as Stephen was just saying. There was no plot or conspiracy or group of people whipping people to vote against Boris Johnson. More than 40% decided really on their own to vote against him. And that's very difficult then to proceed as party leader in the long term. This is like trying to drive along the M1 with two flat tires. And, you can say you're at the steering wheel, but is it really viable? You're not going to get to the end of the motorway.
You said last week that Boris Johnson was in big trouble, that he was going to face a confidence vote as early as the first week of June. So, seeing as you got that right, what's going to happen now?
Well, thank you. No, that is true. I did say that last week. And there were quite a lot of ministers then went on the airwaves to say, no, there won't be a confidence vote, or the Prime Minister will win it very easily if there is a confidence vote. And so I'm not sure that the whips and advisors have really understood what's been going on in the Conservative Party. What's going to happen now is, I imagine what will happen is exactly what Stephen Swinford was just talking about, that Boris Johnson will say it's business as usual, and the cabinet will rally around and everybody will take stock while the two by-elections take place. But there's a big problem here. That's really what I'm saying in my column this morning, that this isn't viable, actually, when more than 40% of your party vote against you, particularly when nobody really organized that. That's the extraordinary thing, as Stephen was just saying. There was no plot or conspiracy or group of people whipping people to vote against Boris Johnson. More than 40% decided really on their own to vote against him. And that's very difficult then to proceed as party leader in the long term. This is like trying to drive along the M1 with two flat tires. And, you can say you're at the steering wheel, but is it really viable? You're not going to get to the end of the motorway. And I think that is the reality. So just like last week, I was trying to point out what I thought was the objective reality. That's what I'm trying to point out this week. But I think the Prime Minister will try to carry on.
Oh, right. So, goodness me. So he's going to try and carry on, even though you think it's not viable. So how does that resolve itself? How does it end?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm only just pointing that out. He doesn't need my approval to carry on. So what I found, I'm just commenting on it, really. So how does it end? It's impossible to foresee how it ends, except it won't end well. I think it really is what I'm saying, that when you have that level of disaffection in a political party, given that as Prime Minister, you have to be able to call on the resources of the whole party, the enthusiasm of the whole party, inspire your MPs, ask any of them to serve in the government. The great majority should be confident they can go into the next election saying, yes, this is the leader for the next 5 years. If you're not in that position, then something else is going to go seriously wrong. I don't know what it will be, but I think that would be my, as I say, hopefully objective assessment.
If you were still Foreign Secretary, if you were in this cabinet, would you go up to the Prime Minister and say, I think you've lost this? Or would you go out in public and say, I have to resign because I don't think it's the right thing to carry on? Do you think that's what you would do and that's what someone should do?
Well, I do think they should give frank advice. Yes, I always, actually the relationship I had with David Cameron when I was Foreign Secretary and he was Prime Minister he always encouraged me to speak my mind, frankly. That was part of the use of having me around, in a way, as a former leader serving in the government. I never had to say that to him. In fact, he never faced a vote of no confidence or a leadership challenge. So I do think they should do that. I mean, I can't really imagine it's hard to imagine if I was in the current cabinet, because I wouldn't have served in the current cabinet. I wouldn't have been able to bear government being conducted in the way it has in the last couple of years, because I think cabinet government hasn't always been the way it's been done, shall we say. And I really do strongly disapprove of what happened in Partygate. But if by some mischance I was still serving and still there, yes, I would frankly say what I thought the position was. And I don't know whether any of them will do that. But I think there will be a lot of stock taking going on over the next few days and weeks.
But isn't the problem, therefore, that actually he's got a weak cabinet of people the people who've been willing to serve in the government that you wouldn't serve in the government of? It almost predisposes them to truckle to Boris Johnson, because if they had any backbone, they wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Well, let's see. Actually, I don't know. Some of them might give that advice behind the scenes. I think some of them certainly think that. They won't say that, but they do think that. Just as I told you last week, there are MPs who were about to trigger a leadership challenge. I think I can say pretty confidently there are cabinet ministers who are now deeply unhappy with this situation. But let's see whether they say anything. I would, if I was them, I would speak my mind, because in the end, you're not much use advising a prime minister or even try to help him out if you don't actually say what you think is really happening.
There is an argument, William Hague, that the number perhaps that voted against Boris Johnson might have been higher last night if there was a clear successor. Now, Jeremy Hunt was involved in a bit of a weird spat with Nadine Dorries on social media last night. Do you think that there is a clear successor, and do you think that is that is affecting perhaps how Tory MPs conduct themselves right now?
I think it does affect it, actually. I think MPs correctly think that they're not sure who the successor would be. And that means that they're more supportive of Boris Johnson, and that's understandable. But I think it also, though, underlines my earlier point that if 41% of your MPs vote against you when they have no idea really who your successor would be, what would the situation be like if they did think there was a clear successor who they were happy to settle on? And so in a way that 41% is a kind of minimum statement of the situation.
Do you still feel he would be the most likely candidate?
Oh, I know that's a trick question.
It's not a trick question.
and so I will I remember I've had 40 years of giving evasive answers when I want to. So no, that I will say, I reach for the answer that says, that's a hypothetical question. And we would have to answer that if we come to that situation, wouldn't we?
Yeah, okay. I never understand why politicians can't answer hypothetical questions. Do you know the answer to that question, William?
Yeah, that's because we get led down paths that we don't want to go down if we answer all the hypothetical questions.
Okay, and they never want to give a running commentary either, so maybe we won't ask you to do that either.
But I told you he got the big calls right.
Yeah, he exactly. At least got the big calls right, even if he's not willing to do a running commentary.